The Trail of Tears, Warrior's Walking Stick. Before Columbus, before the Pilgrims, before Lewis and Clark, this land was beautiful, inhabited by Native Americans, what the visitors called Indians. The land was pure. Those that lived here felt like they were part of the earth and each cared for each other. And then they came on ships with sails, and they called this land, they said they discovered. How do you discover a land that's already inhabited? How do you say and proclaim that this is your land when it already has people that it belongs to? And they came, so many, and the Native Americans at first greeted them, gave them food, showed them how to farm, how to grow crops, how to fish, how to hunt the beautiful land. And the visitors were impressed, but they became greedy. They didn't want to know how to farm. They wanted to know how to take their land. They didn't want to be friends. They wanted to destroy. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed a proclamation, a law, removing all Native Americans from their land east of the Mississippi. He would then promise them a land in Oklahoma, and they were all forced, some killed, many killed, to march from Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia. They were to leave all their land that they had, their houses, and as soon as they did, the visitors would move in and claim it as their own. They were not asked, they were not given a treaty, they were forced to leave. The first ones they rounded up were the Seminole Indians out of Florida. Their land was taken and they were moved and marched. On the Trail of Tears, many died. Over 60,000 Native Americans were displaced. Their ancestors taken. Many of them died because the Trail of Tears was hard. Many of the elders died. They were marched in the snow, starving, and they're killed. The Creek Indians, a very proud nation, were one of the first to be rounded up also. They took all the Creek warriors and the families and the children, marched them. Many of them died. The Choctaw, a Choctaw woman held to her child and held her to her bosom as a child died from starvation in the cold. And she laid her down in the snow in the land that once was theirs. Then the great nation of the Cherokee, they rounded it up and were forced to, what they would call a treaty, to give up their land so the other ones could come in. A great Cherokee chief brought sadness upon his heart for what has happened to his people. The bear claw that used to stand for hope and strength. The crossed arrows, which meant they wanted to live in peace, but the arrows were broken, as so were the treaties. The Mississippi River is where they were marched to, so they could cross over and walk to Oklahoma. Many died. The river ran with blood from all the people that were thrown in there, sacrificed, tortured, killed. The women raped, beaten, the men hung, shot, whatever it took to put fear into the other ones. So I made the Mississippi River run with blood. These are crystals from a rock that was near a mine near the Mississippi. This stick is from a tree that was down on the Mississippi River near the Trail of Tears where they crossed them. There's a memorial there for them. Some of these crystals glitter and shine as if it's the hearts of them still screaming. They walk through the forest. They walk through the snow, through the storms. Some of the Choctaw women on horseback while their men walk beside them to help them. A Cherokee woman and her child covered in blankets and walking through the snow, trying to make it. or one stood for happiness and hope, the thunderbird of the Cherokee, the sign of the sun for the Choctaw, the teepees that they held, what they called home. It was not easy. Many died for simply wanting to live on the land. Many fought back, but were outnumbered. For those that came were selfish and greedy. They didn't want to share the land. They wanted to take the land and everything with it. The Trail of Tears. Many died simply for being there, simply for wanting to live. The American eagle flying over, seeing all its people dying beneath him. This is a story that you don't see too many times in the history books. You hear about it, but it's not amplified like it would be of Lincoln or the Cowboys and Indians or Lewis and Clark. They didn't tell you what it took for them to get the land. They murdered Native Americans, entire families. They raped the children, they raped the girls, they raped the women. So many died. This is the Trail of Tears, walking stick. But more than it is a story of what was and how proud the Cherokees still are, the Choctaw, the Seminole, and what's left of the Creek Indians. All Native Americans, even including out in the West, the Apache, the Navajo, the Zuni, the Crow, the Pueblo, the Apache, all whose lands were taken away simply for the greed, because people didn't want to share, they just wanted to take. Never forget. I won't let you. This is a warrior's walking stick, but it's a story. I want it to be shared. Listen to it. Feel the tears and the sorrow of the Choctaw woman that held her child that died as she laid it in the snow and was forced to continue to march and leave her child there. The proud Creek that fought as much as they could and were overtaken. The Seminole that still fight. And the Cherokee, the greatest nation. Please, don't just listen to this. Pass it on. This is a story that needs to be told so people know exactly what happened, instead of covered by great stories of heroes that killed so many Indians because they did something good. They didn't kill them, they murdered them. A Trail of Tears. One of the passages was a river like this, where they had to cross away from their land, away from their mountains. Never forget. Never forget. Columbus did not discover America, he visited it. We were already here.